Well, you made it to Friday, and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for March the 21st, 2025. It is the 12th Friday of the year, the 17th day of Lent for Christians around the world, so if you're observing, you cannot eat meat today. Initially, the eating of meat was a sacrifice for the full 40 days of Lent, and I'm sure there are Christians that still do that, but for the most of us, it's on Friday. Today is also World Down Syndrome Day, created by Down Syndrome International in 2006. The United States officially recognized March 21st as World Down Syndrome Day through a resolution passed by the Senate in 2011. The date 321 today was chosen to signify the 3 copies of chromosome 21, characteristic of Down syndrome. If you have travel plans today or this weekend, an overnight fire at London's Heathrow Airport has completely shut down the airport, facilitating a big travel mess. This is the Deputy Commissioner of the London Fire Brigade.
Fire involved a transformer comprising of 25,000 litres of cooling oil fully alight. This created a major hazard due to the still live high voltage equipment and the nature of the oil-fuelled fire. 10 fire engines, 2 bulk foam units and 1 high volume pump were on scene at the peak of this incident. This equates to approximately 70 London Fire Brigade personnel.
Officials there say there is no indication of foul play, but we will see as the investigation develops throughout the day. Heathrow is one of the busiest airports in the entire world and is expected to be closed through tomorrow, which is expected to cause a pretty good international travel mess. On a side note, a Southwest Airlines flight was ordered to abort takeoff at the Orlando International Airport yesterday because the pilot was attempting to take off from the taxi lane and not the actual runway. Was it his first day on the job? I don't know. How does that happen? I don't know. At the White House, President Trump is holding an Oval Office meeting with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth today. The two will also be taking questions from the press pool, so you will likely see and hear a lot of that later on today. Then the president will be heading to his Bedminster, New Jersey golf resort for the weekend and not to Florida. The president's executive order to shut down the Department of Education is getting all of the press this morning.
Before we begin, I just want to announce that I signed a proclamation a few moments ago honoring the 250th anniversary of Patrick Henry's famous speech to the Second Virginia Convention, in which he declared very well-known, very famous words, "Give me liberty or give me death." Has anyone heard the phrase? I think most of you have. And moments ago, I also signed an executive order to dramatically increase production of critical minerals and rare earths. It's a big thing in this country. And as you know, we're also signing agreements in various locations to unlock rare earths and minerals and lots of other things all over the world. But in particular, Ukraine, we're doing very well with regard to Ukraine and Russia. And one of the things we are doing is signing a deal very shortly with respect to rare earths with Ukraine, which they have tremendous value in rare earth, and we appreciate that. And we spoke yesterday with, as you know, President Putin and President Zelensky, and we would love to see that come to an end, and I think we're doing pretty well in that regard. So hopefully we can save thousands of people a week from dying. That's what it's all about. They're dying so unnecessarily, and I believe we'll get it done. We'll see what happens, but I believe we'll get it done. Today we take a very historic action that was 45 years in the making. In a few moments, I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the Federal Department of Education once and for all. And it sounds strange, doesn't it? Department of Education, we're going to eliminate it. And everybody knows it's right. And the Democrats know it's right, and I hope they're going to be voting for it because ultimately it may come before them. But everybody knows it's right. and we have to get our children educated. We're not doing well with the world of education in this country, and we haven't for a long time. And we're pleased to be joined today by the woman who I chose because she's an extraordinary person, and hopefully she will be our last Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. Linda, thank you. Thank you very much. That's another interesting statement. It's an interesting opening, right? But it's true, and it's been amazing how popular this has been. I tell people that this is what I'm doing today, and they say, oh, it's about time. Everybody says it. Republicans and Democrats have said it. They're all saying it. Also with us are some terrific people. Governors Greg Abbott. Greg, thank you very much. Governor Ron DeSantis, thank you very much, Ron.
The president went on to acknowledge several other governors and some state representatives that were there, none of which were Democrats. He said even Democrats like what he's doing, but I doubt you will see one single Democrat agreeing with the closing of the Department of Education on TV or radio today. Speaking of being on TV and on radio, more from Greg Kelly.
All right, it happened. After decades and decades of Republicans promising to intend or get around to sooner or later, President Trump, an executive order that will abolish the Department of Education and doing, well, it never should have been done in the first place. We did not need that Department of Education. It was a big bloated mess. It was extraneous, superfluous, unnecessary, unneeded, unwarranted, very, very voracious, that big, silly building sucking up so much money and not helping the children across the country. I did not realize, though, when it was first established, did you actually know it was established right after the Civil War for a little while? And they had the smarts to get rid of it all the way back then after like 2 minutes. But it was established by Jimmy Carter, and the support that it had and did not have. There was nobody on the left who liked this thing either.
When President Carter created the Federal Education Department in 1979, it was opposed by members of his own cabinet, as well as the American Federation of Teachers, the New York Times editorial board, and the famed Democrat Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan. History has proven them right, absolutely right.
And we looked it up. It's true. They were afraid of the federal government and centrality of thought. There would not be diversity in education, that Washington would become too powerful. And Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the unions, the New York Times, they all lined up against the Department of Education. Of course, they're all crying about it being abolished now, except for Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the late, great senator, no longer with us. More from President Trump today at a truly historic event with this executive order that will abolish the DOE.
After 45 years, the United States spends more money on education by far than any other country, and spends likewise by far more money per pupil than any country, and it's not even close. But yet we rank near the bottom of the list in terms of success. It's an amazing stat. Those are two stats you don't want. The most money spent per pupil, and you're at the bottom of the list. And that's where we are, like it or not.
Like it or not, it's interesting. The Department of Education, they don't provide education. They study it. They put out a lot of studies. They monitor. They say things you can't do and say things you can and should do and must do, like the women playing in the girls' sports. That was coming from them. They were the filter. So Jimmy Carter was the guy initially. And like a lot of Democrats, it sounds good, right? It's a beautiful label. What could be wrong with the Department of Education? But it was a power and money grab. It was sniffed out all the way back in the 1860s. The guy in the middle there, I think, is Andrew Johnson. He was the president, and for a short time, they had the Department of Education. There was a guy named Barnard, who was the superintendent of the Department of Education, and they got rid of it after about 4 months because it was highly dysfunctional and highly unnecessary. So, fast forward to today, and they're acting like we just deprived students of their notebooks and pencils.
Happening any minute now. Donald Trump will sign an order to eliminate the Department of Education. a dramatic and unprecedented overreach of his authority as president.
And here you have an administration that says they care about children, but through their actions has made it crystal clear they do not. It will disrupt the educational services and delivery of those services to our kids overnight.
We're gutting these funds. We're taking all of this money away from our kids. We're depriving them of opportunity, and we're depriving them of freedom.
All right, we're taking all the money away from bureaucrats and giving it literally to the kids, to the states. And it's a lot of money, $268 billion a year. Can it be that high? Is that right? Not unnecessary. Some of the greatest education in our country took place in places like this. The one-room schoolhouse. I don't think we ever did education as well since. Or the two-room schoolhouses, or on and on and on. No, forget those guys. Yeah. Remember, this is legendary. Abe Lincoln learned how to read in one of these things. Keep going through the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 2000s. School was direct. It was local. It was, well, the people, the communities know how to educate their children. Interesting that, well, once we had a Department of Education, it seemed like things started to, go downhill a little bit. Where are we lately? Okay, distracted kids, and now we have psychedelic kids, right? I mean, take a look at this next one. All right, we got one with a fish head. Yeah, kids are as goofy as ever. And the Department of Education, unnecessary. Just, it doesn't matter. Look, when we went to the moon, the engineers who took us to the moon, they didn't have a Department of Education either.
Greg Kelly, host of Greg Kelly Reports, 9 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax. When he said kids today are goofy, he was showing a photo of kids all looking at their phones and photos of kids dressed inappropriately for school, which you obviously could not see. Newsmax host Lydia Serrani continued the conversation with a couple of experts who previously worked for the Department of Education.
With us now to discuss, Sarah Marshall-Perry, former senior counsel at the U.S. Department of Education. Also with us, Angela Morabito, former press secretary at the Department of Education. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Sarah, one report I just saw online stating that not a single student can read at grade level in 30 Illinois schools. Is Trump right about sending education back to the states? Because that's exactly what the dismantling of the DOE would do. It sends the power of educating our children back to the state, out of the federal government.
Initiated this process in 1979, which was ultimately enacted through congressional authority, and it's going to have to be fully dismantled through congressional authority. But when he did it, he lacked the constitutional authority to do so. Congress did as well. Education is distinctly a states' right issues. It always has been. It will continue to be. And in fact, the states only receive about 10% of their funding from the federal government. Now, it's significant in the grand scheme of how much is being spent through the Department of Education, but states themselves have sufficient money through through state and local taxpayer dollars to be able to fund the operation of their states. This is a very encouraging first step. It will be a long process. It will require congressional investment of time, energy, and resources, and we need 60 votes in the Senate to do so. But it certainly carries out exactly the same aim that President Reagan has been calling for since 1980, a year after the department itself was created.
Clearly, the department is failing our children. Instead of going up in the test scores, we're falling even further behind. Meantime, Angela, failed vice presidential candidate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, had this to say about Trump's decision.
Let's just name it what it is. The president has no idea how education works. He has no idea how these work. He has no idea how any of this works.
Angela, this is the governor of a state that recently dropped to 19th in the national education rankings under his leadership, and homeschooling in that state, in Minnesota, also continues to rise because parents, they're not happy with how their kids are being taught. So what do you think about Walz's criticism there?
It's absolutely ridiculous. Not only does President Trump know how education works, he knows that right now it's not working. That in states like Governor Walz's state of Minnesota, Test scores are in the tank. Students are really struggling. And parents, when they have a way out of those failing government schools, take it right away. So today's executive order is the start of an incredible new era in American education. It's the end of this failing top-down system that has spent $3 trillion, and yet still we graduate kids who can't read the diplomas that they get handed at graduation. It's ridiculous, and I'm so relieved to see President Trump and Secretary McMahon taking this bold action to turn the tide and restore power over education to the states and ultimately to the parents.
That's former Department of Education Press Secretary Angela Morabito, now with the Defense of Freedom Institute, on Newsmax with Lydia Serrani. Based on the history of this week, right, what we've seen so far, I'm sure that some judge somewhere, if not more than one, is going to move to block this executive order especially. Yesterday, District Judge James Boasberg, that is the judge that attempted to block the illegal immigrant flights of Venezuelans to El Salvador last weekend, he said that the government attorneys failed to meet the deadline set for them to submit information about the deportation flights under the 1798 Alien Enemies Act. Boasberg said what the attorneys submitted hours later, after his deadline, were, quote, woefully insufficient. This is a lot of drama, a lot of theater, pretty much a waste of time. It's not like we, the United States, are going to go back to El Salvador and get all the illegals we dropped off there. I mean, this guy is kind of like Judge Merchan, or he's becoming like Judge Merchan in Trump's New York hush money case, right? Trying to get as much press as he can. What is it going to lead to? And a federal judge in Maryland said the Social Security Administration likely violated privacy laws by giving Elon Musk and Doge access to millions of Americans' private data, and ordered that it halt any further record sharing. The judge did say that rooting out possible fraud, waste, and mismanagement in the Social Security Administration is in the public best interest, but that doesn't mean that the government can break the law to do it. Rob Finnerty spoke about the Department of Social Security with Steve Forbes.
Joining us now for more, former two-time presidential candidate and chairman and CEO of the Forbes Media, Steve Forbes. Great to have you on.
Good to be here.
I just want to ask you, in 1996, let's say you were the nominee, and I think you would have had a better chance than Bob Dole at beating Bill Clinton in 1996.
Thank you.
I do. Was Social Security something, the third rail, so to speak? Was it something you planned to address in the White House?
Yes, and I did it on the campaign trail in Arizona, won the Arizona primary, pointing out you don't have to change benefits for those people who are on the system or about to go on the system, but for younger people, bring in a new system where part or whole of their payroll tax goes to their own personal retirement accounts. And that way, numerous studies have shown, whether you just leave it in CDs, you'd have 2 to 3 times the retirement benefits that you get under the current system. And you would own it, not the Washington politicians.
Right. I remember at that time, Bill Clinton was campaigning a little bit about his legacy ultimately being reforming Social Security, but that never happened. Why?
The Monica Lewinsky scandal came along, and so he was fighting for his life, fighting against impeachment, and so the issue went away. But Senator Moynihan, big Democrat from New York, was in favor of it. John Breaux, senator from Louisiana, Democrat, when Democrat Party had some real adults,
right,
was in favor of it. So I think the real change could be made. And one of the good things today, apropos of that congressman who wouldn't answer your question, is that Social Security supposedly runs out of funds on the assumption of a growth rate of 1.8%. Now, our historic average is about 3.5%. So if the Trump reforms go through, especially a big, delicious tax cut, huge, beautiful tax cut, we can get the growth rate up to 3.5%. That puts off the crisis for at least 10 years, gives us time to reform the system.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if we have a decently growing economy, we can once again have the opportunity. You don't have to take any benefits from those who are on the system or about to go on the system, but for younger people, put in a new system, and that's what they should be focusing on, not taking away current benefits or thinking that 1.8% is the thing we have to stick with, but do something for younger people. And that would be popular as well. The right thing and the popular thing.
Yeah, I want to talk about the retirement age. There's rumors that it could be lifted to 70. They did that in France, and they took to the streets over there and protested. Can you imagine a retirement age at 70? The average age when Social Security was invented, or when it was founded in 1935, the average lifespan of an American was 61. So, yeah, it's gone up over the years. But my goodness, I want to play you a soundbite. This is a Democratic congressman grandstanding, talking about what they want the American people to think Elon Musk and Donald Trump are trying to do with Social Security. Take a look.
Look at the empty seats here. Where's Elon Musk? If he's so great, if these plans and all the fraud and abuse that he's found are so evident, why isn't he here explaining it? You know why. Because he's out to privatize Social Security.
All right. Do you agree with any of that, Steve?
Well, the guy should get an Academy Award nomination.
He was very good.
Yeah. And if yelling was a way to win a debate, he'd win that debate. He can out-yell anyone. Where was Elon Musk during those hearings? Probably out getting rescuing astronauts from the space station. His company did that. Of course. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And was getting out real rate, waste, fraud, and abuse in the government, saving taxpayers' money. How about that? But in terms of Social Security, you don't so-called privatize it. All you do is for younger people, give them the choice. Do you want to stay with the old system that will eventually go broke? Or do you want a new system where your earnings go in an account that belongs to you and will give you a better return? And the nice thing is, when that kind of system is you determine when you want to retire, not the Washington politicians.
Absolutely.
So you get more and you have more choice.
Okay, so quickly, you don't think Donald Trump's going to do away with Social Security? So
No
that
way.
ends that. What do you think happens here? We've got about 30 seconds. Does Congress raise the retirement age, or are they going to raise taxes to try and get more money into an account they've been draining for 80 years?
If they have their brains, none of the above. You can reform the system for younger people. That's what they should do. And forget about jiggling retirement ages, which is seen as taking away something. You have the opportunity to do something for younger people. And if you get the economy growing the way we should, we have at least 10 or 15 years before we have to worry about that trust fund.
I appreciate that. Steve Forbes, great to have you on this evening.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Good to see you, as always.
Steve Forbes, former presidential candidate and chairman, CEO of Forbes Media on Finnerty. There you go. Get the economy going so we have time to rework the system and rework it for younger people. Leave us alone. For the record, I am not on Social Security yet. I'm not that old, but I'm getting close enough to where you don't want the age to be moved up, right? I mean, anytime anyone talks about Social Security, it immediately raises eyebrows and it gets people nervous, rightfully so. So Democrats are going to keep using it to instill fear in people. Speaking of which, Rob also spoke with a couple of Tesla owners about the rise in violence against Tesla because of Elon Musk's involvement in Washington, and I will say, and because of Democrats. Both of these people make some very valid points. Listen closely.
Two Tesla owners, Alexandra Mertz and John Stringer. It's great to have you both on. Alexandra, how frightened are you that what we're seeing right now is not only going to continue, but it's going to get a whole lot worse?
I'm personally not frightened. I live in Santa Barbara in California, and I don't feel any physical hate here. But I have to say it is impressive how quickly this spreads out. We're now at more than 20 Tesla dealerships vandalized. So still, I mean, a number that's relative to the scope of Tesla relatively limited, but what they're doing and how they are acting is such a violent, hateful, maneuvering part, and they are inciting hate within their circles. We see it now. We are seeing, all the protestations and manifestations that they are planning. It is clearly organized, and they are trying to spread it nationwide.
Well funded. John, I want to show you a video. This is at a red light. In America, guy stopped at a red light. He's in a Tesla. He looks over at a guy in a Subaru, and the guy's staring back at him. And this guy looks just like anybody's uncle, and he's giving him the finger. And he did it for the whole light. 25 seconds, he just sat there in his Subaru, middle of the day, just giving him the finger. That's what we're dealing with right now. In Syracuse, New York, exactly who you'd think would be doing this type of vandalism. Guy's got a mask on, a COVID mask. He walks up to a parked Tesla, and he writes, "This car supports Nazis," and puts a swastika on it. By the way, these are all being recorded by the Teslas. This right here is from the Tesla itself. What do you make of what's happening right now?
Yeah, it's absolutely wild. I mean, these people that have these cars bought these cars 2 to 5 years ago, maybe even months ago before the new administration. They're using their hard-earned money to go buy what is the best product and safest car on the road. And again, as you see, these cars record themselves, but it's absolutely not okay to hurt someone else's car, vandalize it, their property. Even the Tesla employees are being berated and threatened in various locations. And so this thing has, unfortunately, it seems like the protests have just gotten worse, and it's led to violence in various areas. And actually, the footage you rolled earlier of the older male who was actually being confronted, I was actually dealing with the owner themselves to release a lot of this footage that happened. And that guy is facing felony vandalism, and he's still in jail as far as I heard as far as last night. But it's absolutely just not okay for people to be attacking owners who may have brought the product 2 to 5 years ago, and they actually are probably left-leaning. I sit in the Silicon Valley, and most of those people are going to be left-leaning, and they just want to drive a car, and it's not a political statement. So it's pretty crazy to think that potentially the people that are inciting all of this violence are from the same party.
Exactly. That is what I said the other day. The majority of Tesla owners, at least until recently, are liberals. More Teslas were sold or are sold in California than anywhere else. So liberals are mostly attacking other liberals in an effort to hurt Elon Musk. And if you don't know, as the gentleman said, Teslas have multiple cameras, front, back, sides, all around, that have the capability of recording to the Tesla app that you have on your phone if you own the vehicle. So it's pretty easy to collect evidence against the morons that are doing this. The woman in the interview, Alexandra, is also a big investor in Tesla.
Alexandra, this is Jasmine Crockett, this Texas congresswoman who's getting way too much attention right now, talking about what she wants to happen to Elon Musk. Take a listen.
On March 29th, it's my birthday. And all I want to see happen on my birthday is for Elon to be taken down. Yes, you are sending a message, and I am so thankful. I'm going to keep screaming in the halls of Congress. I just need y'all to make sure that y'all keep screaming in the streets.
You interpret that to mean, Alexandra?
I mean, this is craziness. This is really inciting people to violence, to domestic terrorism, and this has to stop. And we need the Democrats to speak out against their own congressperson and against their own. I mean, we also know it's not only politically motivated, they're also short sellers. So there are people paying to make money out of this position because they have short positions on the equity market. So we're seeing this coming from two sides, from both the political hatred and from short sellers.
That's interesting. I know you're heavily invested in Tesla. The stock price is what? It's half of what it was Christmas Eve. I think it was $400 something the day before Christmas. Is now a good time to buy Tesla?
I am accumulating, and we're seeing actually a lot of retail purchases, which is great because at the moment the retail shareholders in Tesla were down to about 31%, and we hope to get that back up.
Tesla owner and investor Alexandra Mers on Finnerty. There is a lot to unpack right there. First off, Texas Representative Crockett has to be censured or expelled at this point for the comments that she's been making. She is trying so hard, as I said a few days ago, as Rob just mentioned, to make a name for herself and to get publicity, which she's getting way too much of because she keeps saying outlandish things like that every day. I want Elon Musk taken down for my birthday. That is not okay. It is not okay for a member of Congress to say that. What does she mean, taken down? Remember when we found out that Facebook was deleting conservative information? Imagine if any Republican representative, back then it could have been Congressman Matt Gaetz, okay, or MTG, would have said, I want Mark Zuckerberg taken down. What does that mean, taken down? And I will keep fighting in Washington, and you keep fighting in the streets. That's what she said. By the way, Tesla's headquarters, that employs more than 22,000 people, is in her home state of Texas. And the Tesla investor on Finnerty mentioned short sellers. If you don't know, when you short sell a stock, you make money from the stock going down. So some of these people could be heavily invested in short selling Tesla stock as they help the stock go down. And as the country continues to read through the newly released JFK files, Rob Schmitt had a great conversation with Roger Stone.
All right, as of tonight, it appears about 30% of all files surrounding JFK's assassination have not yet been released. And after more than 60 years of secrecy surrounding the murder of JFK, questions still swirl. Many suspect a shadow government-driven conspiracy. There's so many different indicators that point to something like that and point to Alan Dulles, CIA director at the time. Many theorize about what LBJ, who was Kennedy's vice president, what he might have known. And one of those that suspects something there is my next guest. Roger Stone is the author of the New York Times bestselling book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ. And Roger Stone joins us now. And, sir, it's good to see you again. What are your take on this release? You know, the president, he really wanted to see it all. And he made a big push. And it's something to me that we still don't have it all, despite this mandate from the President of the United States.
Well, hopefully we eventually will have it all. Remember that the Congress passed a law in 1994 which mandated the release of all of these documents, and that was supposed to be in 2017. At that time, President Trump decided to release about 80% of it, but the then Central Intelligence Agency Director, Mike Pompeo, asked him to hold back 20%. To me, that was a leading indicator that the agency has something to hide. Now, what we've seen so far, there's some self-contradictions. I've always thought that Lyndon Johnson, and I think I've proven in my New York Times bestselling book, that Johnson has an involvement here, but didn't certainly act alone. And there's more than enough evidence here that the Central Intelligence Agency both knew far more about Oswald than they said they did. On the other hand, if Oswald did indeed shoot John F. Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963, why does he have no nitrates, no powder burns on his chest, his arms, or his hands? That would be inconsistent with shooting a World War II vintage $26 Italian Army carbine. So I still stick to the basic thesis of my book that there is a plot that involves the Central Intelligence Agency, organized crime, Big Texas Oil. But at the helm of that plot, I still believe there's substantial evidence against Lyndon Baines Johnson. I try to look at motive, means, and opportunity. Lyndon Johnson was under intense investigation in two major scandals, the Bobby Baker scandal and the Billy Sol Estes scandal. Robert Kennedy, Sr., the Attorney General, had already told people that Johnson was being dropped from the 1964 ticket and that he would be prosecuted. So his motive to move against Kennedy, his motive to persuade Kennedy to go to Texas, his insistence that the motorcade go through Dealey Plaza, total violation of the Secret Service protocols, all I think is extraordinarily suspicious.
Roger Stone, author of the New York Times bestseller, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, which I am now going to order when I'm done recording. I used to live in Dallas, by the way. I've been to Dealey Plaza. I've been to the museum. It is all pretty fascinating. So President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth are meeting at the White House and holding a news conference there, or at least, answering questions, addressing questions, not technically a news conference. Former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg announced yesterday that he will not be seeking a Democratic Senate seat in 2026, raising the likelihood that he will be seeking the presidency in 2028. And the state of Florida executed a death row inmate last night by lethal injection after the Supreme Court denied his appeal. 63-year-old Edward James was convicted in the 1993 rape and murder of an 8-year-old girl and the murder of her grandmother. The Supreme Court also denied a last-minute appeal from a death row inmate in Oklahoma, who was also executed yesterday. There were 2 other executions in the United States this week as well, Arizona and Louisiana. Notice anything that these states have in common? Be sure to keep up with all of the news and breaking developments throughout the day and the weekend on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com. Also, make sure you have the Newsmax app with you on your phone so you can stay up to date anywhere, anytime. I'm Tony Marino. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a fantastic and safe weekend. Do the things that you love to do, or try to do the things you love to do, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Hey, it's Jerry Callahan from The Callahan Show. You can listen to us every day. We react to the latest news, politics, sports, and all the madness in the world. I'll give you my opinion with a little edge, a little attitude. I'm an unapologetic right-winger, trapped behind enemy lines in deep blue Boston, so I'm used to taking on the mainstream media mob. You can hear us anywhere you get your podcast, or you can listen every day at newsmax.com/listen.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.